We open on some good old xenophobia. Under normal circumstances, I'm not sure that I would necessarily call this xenophobia since the divide between wonders and normal seems to be more psychological. Under better circumstances, I might even go so far as to say that the wonder gene is a metaphor for autism. But I'm not quite sure that the author was that self-aware for a novel and leave it at that. Hello and welcome to Quotation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of The Looking Glass Illusion by Sara Ella. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 5. As Alice continues on her way, she ponders over what she witnessed. She can't believe that it's true and thinks about what it could possibly mean. She gets if Catherine was the same age as Scarlet and Cordelia, but according to the vision, the three of them were supposedly triplets. The thing that's holding her up is the idea that Charlotte is apparently a lot older than 26. She understands the idea that maybe Charlotte could be 27 or something, but not probably in her 40s now. She pulls up Scarlett's info on her Wonder Vision and looks at her profile picture. Then she pulls up Charlotte so she can compare the two of them. Originally, Alice had thought that they were identical, but now she notes a bunch of little differences. She also thinks that Charlotte looks more like her than she'd originally thought. But I'd like to remind you of a throwaway line from the first book. Alice once said that the only thing that she and Charlotte shared was their astigmatism, for which they both had glasses. By Alice's own logic, I'm also related to her. I'm not sure that I trust Alice's judgment in these matters because she's already proven that she's not bright. However, from deciding that she and Charlotte share the same nose, Alice decides that Charlotte must actually be Catherine's sister, which would make her Alice's aunt. No mention on who that would make Scarlet or Cordelia, but I'm honestly not sure that the thought actually occurred to the author. If Scarlet isn't the rightful Queen of Wonderland, or even royalty at all, does anyone else know? Okay. Back it up here. So if Scarlet is the twin sister of Cordelia, the current sitting monarch, then why wouldn't Scarlet have also kept her previous royal title? Friendly reminder that Queen Elizabeth had 4 children, and although the other 3 aren't sitting on the throne, there's still Anne, Princess Royal, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh. But then again, the author has made it really clear in the first book that she has no idea how the UK in general works, so naturally she'd assume that if you were passed over for the crown, then you'd end up having no royal titles and kicked out from the family, I guess. What is happening? This also raises the question on if Scarlet isn't a legitimate queen, then are the lesser royal titles of the other characters also meaningless? All of that having apparently been decided, the fact of if it's a satisfactory decision or not remains to be seen. The narration is quick to turn to Alice wandering around the woods as she waits for literally anything else to happen. There's a tedious scene where she finds a brook, but it's another illusion, and also ends up taking way too much page time without contributing one iota of anything remotely relevant. She then comes across another illusion of Cordelia, who is younger than in the previous ones. She also asks that if she'd like to be called Celia, even though I'm not quite sure how you get Celia from Cordelia, but whatever. She continues to call Alice Catherine and teases Cat that she'll soon become queen, then goes on to say that Charlotte will be stiff competition. Again, Alice has no idea if this is a memory of her mother's or if this is nonsense flung at her by the competition, but she vows to remember all of it in case this is important later. Celia encourages Alice that they should race to some sort of cabin, so they do that. However, Alice stops short when she reaches a veil of thick rain, but she puts her hand through and she's somehow surprised that this is Wonderland rain and it moves around her without getting her wet. She also spends such a long time here contemplating this rain, although I'm not quite sure why. Either go through it or find a different way to go, geez. She eventually goes there and finds herself at a house. She tries the door, but it's locked and nobody answers, so she uses her music box, which unlocks the door. She feels she's uncovered another shortcut. Inside, she finds a stuffed rabbit, which she's beyond disappointed to learn is nothing more than a toy rather than something that'll talk to her and give her clues. Alice wanders around the house for a while, simultaneously searching for Celia, the source of the mysterious music coming from nowhere, and also food. I think she's more disappointed about the lack of food or water. Alice then digs up an old hand mirror and spends so much time staring at it until her Wonder Vision overlay blinks on. It's not even a character, but rather a cheap plot device, and it somehow has more agency than Alice does. Ugh. She thinks about how her mom made the Wonder Vision and simultaneously wonders why it's so broken. The idea that her mother or somebody else spying on her, giving her helpful clues, is apparently beyond her. Alice then has a brilliant idea that as long as the missing children are in the Wonder Vision system at some point, she can look them up. However, besides the most basic of info, the system won't tell her anything of actual value since she's not friends with them. She then moves on to trying to find the location of her teammates, but the program then freezes up and refuses to actually show the locations. Frustrated, she chucks the bangle against the wall. It's at this point that Alice starts to think that the cottage is nothing more than a distraction from getting to the end. However, I'm not quite convinced about that. Alice is so narrow-minded that she's probably missing important clues simply because she's too busy sulking. She says she wants to go home, but then takes it back. She thinks that if she were to quit now, she wouldn't actually have answers about her mother, which I'd like to remind you, she hasn't seemed like she's actually cared about finding out about her mother up until right now. She picks up her bangle and is surprised when she realizes that she's gained a life. She thinks that it must have been something that she'd done rather than the possibility that somebody's hacking into the system. But as I keep saying, logic and intelligence isn't her strong suit. Regardless of how she got the life, it fills her with hope, so she goes skipping off to the next task. Chapter 6. As Chess races down to where he heard the train, he thinks for a second something kind of important. He knows that Dinah and the others want to overthrow Scarlet and find the Ivory King, but never once have they stopped to explain why. He knows that there's a lot that they're intentionally hiding even from him, but the most basic things, such as why, continues to remain a mystery. The train appears, the tracks only appearing under it. Chess races after it, but finds that the speed of the locomotive is only matchable if you're Superman. He finds that he might be able to do it if he were on all fours, so he drinks some tea and turns himself into a cat. He races after the train, and a goat man catches him and yanks him on at the last minute. Chess has to wait until the tea wears off before he can properly thank the man. Inside the train, there's a bunch of people asleep. Chess is obviously curious as to who these people are and know that they can't be illusions created by the Wonder Vision, since he took that off after his plot-relevant conversation with the other three sweet leaders and Dina. The goat man leads him to another car where Chess is surprised to see a familiar figure. It's Stark Hatter, Maddie's missing brother. Chess tries to talk to the boy, but Stark acts like he doesn't recognize the names of Maddie or Raving. The goat man kind of implies that staying here addles the mind, but says as much in the form of a riddle that Chess fails to understand. Continuing on, the goat man introduces himself as Buckley. He says that time moves differently here in the King's trial. Obviously, Chess wants to know more about that, but is met with more confusing riddles from Buckley. Frustrated, Chess wonders if this is what it's like for Alice every single time he talked in nonsensical riddles to her, which is funny now that the shoe is on the other foot here. They pause briefly to eat. During that time, Stark falls asleep, completely unaware of what's going on around him. It's only after they finish that Chess presses Buckley about the King's trials. Buckley explains that Chess started on square one and went to square two, which is the woods. Chess asks if this is square three, but Buckley laughs and says no, that the train will continue to go round and around until either the portal closes or Chess manages to get off at square one again. That he'll remain like this until Chess changes his mind. Chess turns his attention back to Stark, or more specifically, the teeny sounds coming from Stark's headphones. Chess gets closer so that he can hear that it's Maddie's podcast about the trials. She's talking about the fourth and unpassable trial, where many have entered, but those who came back have literally zero memory of having done so. He then begins to think about the trial last year, where Team Spade had been declared the winner by Scarlet, even though none of them had completed it. They were simply the ones who had been in there the longest. This is also the first actual acknowledgement that Chess has participated in the trials last year. Yes, it had been mentioned offhand, but in a real throwaway line sort of way. It was irrelevant to the plot, to the point where I wonder why the author continued to hammer in this fact. However, much as Maddie explained at the top of the page, Chess has literally no memory of the fourth trial, only snippets of his brother's face. Chess then turns back to Buckley, who has since fallen asleep. He wakes up the goat man and demands a further explanation. Buckley then says that the portal opens once a year for a week to take people to a place that's always there. Again, he's kind of speaking in riddles, but riddles that are meant to confound the seriously stupid. Buckley says that he was at checkpoint, so Chess asks if there are others. Buckley agrees, but also agrees that Chess asks that he can't go back from this point, that the only way to go is forward. Chess thinks that the reason why there are so many people who get lost is because they got stuck at checkpoints. Buckley confirms that if people are still at checkpoints when the portal closes, they will forever remain there. That's why people are so addled. Chess then starts to look around for a clock, apparently having already forgotten that Buckley told him previously that they exist in a place outside of time itself. Chess studies Buckley intently and eventually realizes that the man's eyes are literally clocks, one eye for seconds and the other for minutes. That's really creepy, and I wonder why he never noticed until right now. Buckley congratulates him on his finances that Stark also noticed. He signals out Stark, if only because he's the only named character around. Anyway, Chess knows that the way through this part of the trial is to change the direction of time itself, but he doesn't know how to begin doing something like that. Instead, Buckley asks if Chess is hungry, and the attendant comes back with more food. However, rather than to question why they'd eat again, Chess's memory seemed to have disappeared. He looks at the other man in the train car with them, Stark, only to be like, I've never seen this person before in my life. Chapter 7. We open on some good old xenophobia. Under normal circumstances, I'm not sure that I would necessarily call this xenophobia since the divide between wonders and normal seems to be more psychological. Under better circumstances, I might even go so far as to say that the wonder gene is a metaphor for autism. But I'm not quite sure that the author was that self-aware for a novel and leave it at that. Anyway, Alice is hiding in a cupboard, overhearing another plot-relevant conversation from the past. How she got into the cupboard is beyond me, since this is never explained, but that's not important. The conversation is between the Minister of Spades and Charlotte. Charlotte is a lot older than how she is currently, probably closer to how old that Scarlet is right now. But Alice knows her sister and intimately knows her sister's voice. This is Charlotte. But going back to the argument, the minister thinks that they should keep out any normals from Wonderland. As I said, this is straight up xenophobia, if only because we're bringing physical locations into the mix. Charlotte argues that it's already been proven that normals can change and become wonders, that Alice is a wonder. The minister scoffs over the idea and says that she's no more wonder than any other normal, that Alice is literally trash simply because of this. At this point, Alice wakes up in the cabin from earlier. All of that had been a dream. She suddenly remembers hiding in a cabinet when she was 5 and witnessing this conversation. She's also of the opinion that these are her lost memories, finally returning to her. But with the return of those memories also comes the crippling doubt. Was it actually real? If that's Charlotte, then who's Scarlet? A storm starts to approach, and Alice decides that this storm must be bringing with it the Jabberwock. She randomly hides under the bed as if that'll somehow protect her, but then she decides that right now is the perfect time to read some poetry, specifically the Jabberwock poem. Anybody who's even remotely familiar with Carol's original work could tell you that, much like everything else, the Jabberwock poem is kind of nonsensical. Oh, if I actually cared, I could probably tell you the actual meaning of the poem, the meaning of which I'm sure flew over the head of the author, but ain't nobody got time for that. So, about half a page after reading it, Alice eventually and randomly comes to the conclusion that if anything else in Wonderland only exists because people will it to exist, so too must the Jabberwock. And I have to say, we're now 7 chapters in, and that was much later than I thought that Alice's magical Mary Sue guessing powers came into play. But they still came out because the author seemingly lacks the ability to write any other way. Alice is excited by this discovery, so she quickly crawls out from the bed. The Jabberwock starts to tap its talons on the window, so Alice screws her eyes shut and says, "I don't believe in you," over and over until, well, it stops existing. Alice knows that this isn't a long-term solution, but at least she's safe for now. Alice then hears noises from the hand mirror she found earlier. She thinks about the things that she'd already witnessed and how they might connect her to the present. If there is an actual connection, it's rather lost on me in this fart-sniffing novel. South Park reference. Anyway, she starts to go through the mirror and overhears a mysterious woman complaining to Danny that Queen Charlotte and her scientist sister are going to destroy Wonderland. Of chess. The thought of him stings. We've not even been apart a day, and already it feels like a never-ending game of solitaire. I think this is the first time since Square One that Alice has had a thought of chess. It's like the author remembered that if she doesn't keep reminding the readers that the two of them are supposed to be in love, that we'll forget. You know, as a replacement for actually writing a compelling romance where the readers actually believe that these two deeply care for one another. Anyway, Alice finds herself in a ballroom that's decorated for a Christmas party. She finds the larger version of the hand mirror in the wall, and in the reflection she finds that she's Catherine again. The narration screeches to a halt so that it can describe what Catherine/Alice is wearing, and the way that Alice turns to admire herself in the mirror. How can I help but stare at her, and why do I miss someone that I don't even remember? If you have no memories of your mother, but you still yearn for her, you probably are actually only longing for the idea of a mother, not specifically your mother. Dina's voice draws near, so Alice hides out on the balcony. Dina and the Duchess of Diamonds, Savine, come into the room and start talking about their plans to do away with Queen Charlotte. They want to chuck her into the pool of tears, which I'm gonna go ahead and say it. That's why Charlotte looks 20 years younger, isn't it? After that, they plan to put a doppelganger of Queen Scarlet on the throne, which I'm confused about because I thought that Scarlet was a person who existed already. I can't follow this unedited mess of a novel, but Scarlet will basically be a puppet that they can control. Savine is a little worried that Catherine will notice the switch, but Dina waves off this worry and insists that Catherine is too busy with her scientific research to notice. Dina all but laughs over the idea of keeping everybody from the real Wonderland, that the longer that they're away, the harder it is for people to remember the truth. After that, then, they'll, and I quote, rewrite history. Chapter 8. Alice is roughly yanked out from the memory/illusion. She can't seem to open her eyes, but she recognizes the voices, Sophia and Willow. I'd also like to point out that following the reintroduction of Team Heart at the start of the book, Sophia and Willow haven't been mentioned since. Alice has obviously been thinking a lot about chess, but she's also mentioned Jack, Knave, and Maddie in passing, never these flesh-shaped characters. Anyway, the two of them pour some focus fix tea down Alice's throat. As Alice struggles to wake up, her mind rolls over what she'd learned from her last trip down somebody else's memory lane. How evil Dina truly is in trying to uncover exactly who Scarlet actually is. When she does wake up, Sophia and Willow explain that they found each other in the woods and then they found Alice. That's it. No further explanation is given other than they found each other. Alice gives them the Cliff Notes version of what's been happening to her, omitting the parts about Dina. However, the two others think that Alice is off her rocker about the entire thing, which is kind of odd considering that they're in a land where literally anything can happen. Apparently, having visions about your dead mom's past is too much even for these weirdos. They tell Alice that before the trial started, Maddie had given them two different vials of tea. The focus fixed one to Sophia and Flourisher's fate to Willow. Alice is like, why didn't I get any tea? Then starts to dig through her bag upon their insistence that she must have been given one too. Alice finds a vial, but the three of them have no idea what it is. But despite Alice's insistence that she trusts Maddie, she's not about to go and drink a mystery drink. Again. Fool me 50 times and all that. That settled, the girls debate if they should keep moving or wait there for the rest of the team to find them. Alice asks them what happened during their 4 trials last year, but they say that their team never made it to the last trial. That Blanche was their trainer, but she was terrible. As they decide to press on, Alice thinks that she needs to sit down and come up with a list of people she can and can't trust. The three of them walk until they come to a stream. Alice is relieved to find out that this one is real. She isn't sure how long that she'd been walking, since time itself seems to be holding still. Her necklace watched at 6 p.m., but the time on her Wonder Vision is frozen, so she doesn't trust it. Willow and Sophia tell Alice to rest by the water while they go to try and find wild food growing, which, why would you eat random food like that? It's not so much of the safety of any wild food, but specifically random food found in the last Wonderland Trial. It's like they've learnt no lessons this entire time, which is funny considering a few pages earlier they advised Alice to not drink the mystery tea, and yet they're willing to risk it all on some truffles. As she waits, Alice gets out a letter Charlotte had given her before one of the other trials, but as she looks at it again, she notices in the bright sunlight that some of the words are written in dark blue ink instead of black. But rather than to tell us what this secret message says, Alice turns her attention to some of the notes she'd written earlier. The first thing she does is to cross off her speculation that Charlotte was Scarlet's daughter, then she writes who she can trust. It's a short list containing only Charlotte, Blanche, and Lavender Hatter, the mother of Stark, Raving, and Maddie. She's been mentioned a couple of times in passing in some of the visions Alice has been having, but obviously made such an impression on me that this is my first time mentioning her. Alice is uncertain about where Maddie herself stands. For her enemies, Alice lists Dina, then the 4 heads of each quarter. Then finally, Alice turns to Charlotte's note. The secret phrase is, the palace is afraid, but Alice isn't sure of what, and her first thought is the Jabberwock. But then she dismisses it as a red herring that it is. Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same thing as Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more book Snarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash tales on my stories, so if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!